this has been for quite a while, but there seems to be something strange happening with Far Cry. I mean, if you've been paying attention to the leaks and the quiet reshuffling inside Ubisoft, you might have felt it too. The series that once defined open-world, chaotic sandbox shooters is reportedly praying for one of the biggest reinventions yet. In fact, if the rumors surrounding the Far Cry 7 are even half true, this won't just be another tropical dictatorship to overthrow. It could for once be one structural reset for that entire franchise. For years, Far Cry followed a recognizable formula. You drop into a hostile region, a charismatic villain dominates the box art, you climb towers, liberate outposts, craft gear, and slowly dismantle the regime piece by piece. It worked brilliantly in Far Cry 3, refined itself in Far Cry 4, went biblical and explosive in Far Cry 5, and stretched into guerrilla revolution territory with Far Cry 6. But by the time Far Cry 6 rolled credits, even long-time fans were starting to ask the uncomfortable question: has the formula gone stale? Well, Ubisoft apparently seems to think so. Multiple insider reports over the past couple of years suggest that Far Cry 7 reportedly developed under the internal codename Project Blackbird as being rebuilt on a new foundation. Not just a new map, not just a new villain, a new structure, a new engine direction, a new design philosophy. And the most interesting rumor of all is a time limit. That's right, one of the most persistent leaks claims that Far Cry 7 will revolve around a narrative built around a ticking clock. Instead of slowly clearing icons off a map at your own pace, players may be operating under a strict in-game time constraint, allegedly around 24 real-world hours, to rescue members of a kidnapped family from a cult-like organization. I mean, that single mechanic, if true, fundamentally changes how Far Cry plays. Because Far Cry has always been about freedom, wonder, exploring, causing chaos. Ignore the main story for 10 hours if you feel like it. A time limit injects tension into that sandbox. It forces decisions. It creates urgency. It shifts the tone from leisurely domination to desperate survival now. And that seems to not be the only major rumor floating around. Reports also suggest that Ubisoft is separating Far Cry 7 from a multiplayer-focused spin-off project, meaning the next mainline entry could lean heavily into a more focused single-player experience. That's important because Far Cry's identity has always been strongest when its villain, setting, and narrative tension drive the experience. Think about Voss in Far Cry 3. Joseph Seed in Far Cry 5, even Anton Callisto in Far Cry 6 brought cinematic weight to the franchise. But strong villains only carry you so far if the gameplay loop feels predictable. That's where the engine conversation becomes crucial. You see, Far Cry has long relied on iterations of the Dunia engine, which itself is derived from CryEngine roots. Now, while technically capable, it is shown its age. Leaks indicate that Far Cry 7 may shift towards a more modernized engine infrastructure within Ubisoft's ecosystem, possibly aligning more closely with technologies used across other major Ubisoft franchises. And if that's true, you can expect some improved AI systems, denser environments, more dynamic world events, potentially a stronger emphasis on systemic gameplay rather than checklist progression. Like, imagine an enemy faction that adapts to how you play. If you rely heavily on stealth, patrol patterns change. If you prefer explosives, armor conveys increase. If you attack supply lines, the world economy responds. These kinds of systemic reactions are what modern open-world players crave, not just bigger maps, smarter ones. The rumored setting is also quite fascinating. While nothing has been officially confirmed, leaks hint at a more isolated, possibly northern or wilderness-heavy environment rather than another tropical island or a Caribbean dictatorship. Maybe a harsher, survival-driven setting would align perfectly with the ticking clock narrative concept. Less power fantasy, more vulnerability. And that vulnerability is something Far Cry hasn't truly embraced since Far Cry 2. That game, developed by Ubisoft Montreal, forced players to manage disease, weapon degradation, unpredictable fire spread systems. It was messy, unforgiving, and divisive, but it was bold. Since then, the series leaned further into accessibility and explosive empowerment. If Far Cry 7 brings back some of, that tension, it could reintroduce unpredictability the franchise desperately needs. There's also chatter about a more non-linear narrative structure. Rather than a map divided into clean, regional bosses per se, players might have to gather intelligence organically, track targets dynamically, and decide which family member to rescue first, which itself creates replayability naturally. It also builds personal stakes. If you fail to reach someone in time, what happens? Is the story altered permanently? Does the world shift based on who survives? Ubisoft is at a critical crossroads right now. The company has faced delays, restructuring, intense scrutiny over the recent years. Revitalizing a flagship franchise like Far Cry is not just about sales numbers, it's about confidence. It's about showing that Ubisoft can evolve rather than iterate. Far Cry 7 could be their statement, but of course evolution always carries risk. If the time limit system feels restrictive rather than thrilling, it could definitely alienate longtime fans who enjoy slow exploration. If systemic AI becomes frustrating instead of reactive, it could feel punishing. If the narrative tone, though, shifts too far into seriousness without the franchise's signature energy, it might lose its identity. Balancing reinvention with familiarity will sort of be everything. In fact, one thing that seems clear from insider chatter is that Ubisoft understands the fatigue around this franchise. There's also speculations that Far Cry 7 may feature some advanced co-op integration without making it mandatory. Now, Far Cry shines when it traps you in hostile territory. With limited resources and overwhelming odds, it thrives on tension between power and vulnerability. When it becomes too easy, too predictable, it kind of loses that edge. On top of that, the rumored cult antagonist in Far Cry 6 could echo the psychological manipulation themes that made Joseph Seed so freaking memorable, but hopefully with more nuance and less repetition. A villain who reacts to your progress, who changes strategically as you dismantle the network. That sort of dynamic storytelling would elevate the entire experience. Ubisoft can push environmental density, destruction systems, and AI behaviors further than before. Weather systems that alter visibility and movement, wildlife that becomes a tactical factor rather than just background noise. These elements, if integrated properly, would create a Far Cry world that feels less like a theme park and more like an ecosystem. Of course, until Ubisoft officially reveals Far Cry 7, everything just remains in rumor territory. And maybe that's exactly what the franchise needs right now. Because at its best, Far Cry is not about clearing maps, it's about surviving. It's about improvisation, it's about those unscripted moments when a stealth mission explodes into total madness. It'll be survival under pressure. And that's a far more interesting place to be. And that's the story for another time.